24 years, 11 months, and 27 days. That was the exact time I was counting down to reap the rewards of a lifetime. And, as I later discovered, to see it all crumble. I'm Alice Miller, Master Brewer. Until 5 minutes ago, the heart and soul of Legacy Brews Co., a name I helped build right here in Riverbend, pint by pint. Ethan Bradshaw, the founder's grandson, the company's new visionary, looked at me from across his polished mahogany desk with the coldness of someone observing an insect. Alice, how long has it been with us? 24 years, isn't it? His voice oily, slippery. Quite a legacy. 24 years and almost 364 days to be exact, I replied mentally, my stomach nodding as I noticed the manila folder on his desk. In all my time at Legacy Brews, I'd never been summoned to Ethan's ivory tower on a Friday afternoon. Something smelled like spoiled hops. Me, Alice, 59 years old, and until that moment, the creator behind every award-winning label of that craft brewery, which had become an icon in the Midwest. I'd spent nearly 2.5 decades perfecting recipes, innovating with local ingredients, ensuring every bottle from Legacy Brews was an experience. My Legacy Award, a substantial bonus, and the launch of my masterpiece, the Imperial Dawn, were set for next Tuesday, just 4 days away. The culmination of a life dedicated to the art of brewing was within my grasp. Ethan slid the folder across his desk. Due to a strategic restructuring, we're terminating your contract. His eyes never met mine. Effective immediately. The floor seemed to vanish beneath me. Restructuring? Legacy Brews had just announced its best semester ever, largely thanks to the Valley Heirlooms line I developed. This is your severance package, he continued, tapping the folder with a finger adorned with a signet ring. Sign by tomorrow or there's no deal. HR will escort you to clear out your desk. I should have felt anger, shock, perhaps the urge to plead. Instead, a strange calm washed over me. This wasn't random. This was calculated, precisely timed to rob me of the Legacy Award, and I suspected the Imperial Dawn itself. Thank you for the opportunity, I said quietly, picking up the folder. I didn't open it. Ethan looked surprised by my composure, perhaps expecting tears or protests. But I'd spent my career analyzing fermentation processes, and this pattern of contamination was crystal clear. I stood, smoothed the skirt that suddenly felt uncomfortable, and walked out with what dignity I had left. Marlene from HR hovered awkwardly as I packed my personal items. The photo of my late Arthur, my partner in so many homebrewing adventures in the early days. The small hop plant my granddaughter Clara gave me when she started getting interested in my plant magic. And the plaque I'd received for 20 years of service, now a sick joke. I didn't take much. What truly mattered couldn't fit in a cardboard box. I'm so sorry, Alice, Marlene whispered, glancing nervously toward the security guard waiting to escort me out. This isn't right. It is what it is, I replied. But inside, I knew better. This wasn't just wrong. It was theft, misappropriation of my creation. For the past 2 years, ever since Ethan took over after his grandfather retired, I'd been noting, with the precision of an award-winning recipe, his suspicious innovations. He was a master at taking my ideas, discussed in informal meetings, and representing them weeks later as his own epiphanies. The Mountain Flavors line, a roaring success, was born from a project of mine, shelved by Ethan's father years ago, which he rediscovered. Detailed emails I sent, sketches of new processes, everything seemed to be subtly cannibalized. I had flagged concerns about the use of cheaper extracts in some popular lines, masking the drop in quality with aggressive marketing. It had all been ignored, minimized, or met with a focus on your specialty brews, Alice. The drive home, through the familiar streets of Riverbend, was a blur. 24 years of passion, of early mornings testing malts, of hands calloused by equipment, reduced to a manila folder and a cardboard box. The fine autumn rain tapped against my windshield as I passed the Old Town Square, the stage for so many Oktoberfests where my beers had shone. I thought about the sacrifices, the family parties postponed for a critical fermentation, the countless hours spent poring over chemistry and botany books. I gave Legacy Brews my prime years, believing in the recognition the Legacy Award and the Imperial Dawn would bring. Ethan had only been with the company for 3 years. He arrived with a reputation as a modernizer, which in practice meant cutting costs and riding the wave of what was already built. I knew we would clash when I refused to sign off on the feasibility report for his latest brilliant idea, a zero-alcohol line that used a chemical process which, in my opinion, compromised the integrity of the craft brand. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly and ruthlessly he would move to eliminate me. At home, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, my hands still trembling, and finally opened the severance package. The terms were insulting. 2-month salary in exchange for waiving all future rights, including, implicitly, any claim to the Imperial Dawn, no mention of the Legacy Award, no health insurance. Just a check and a legal trap designed to silence me. They demanded a signature by 5 p.m. Saturday. They were counting on fear, on desperation to make me sign blindly. This wasn't standard practice. It was a calculated robbery of my intellectual property. I set the papers aside and went to my small home office, where I kept my treasures. Behind a collection of books on brewing history was an old wooden chest. My real insurance policy. For years, I'd brought home copies of all my development notebooks, with detailed recipes, creation dates, test results, and emails exchanged with management about each new product, including the entire genesis of the Imperial Dawn. It was all there. Over a decade of meticulous records, showing the origin of every innovation Ethan now tried to claim as his own. I had informally reported my concerns about his conduct to the former production director, who retired shortly after Ethan's arrival, only to be ignored. I reached for my phone, scrolling to a contact I hadn't used in ages. Mr. Elias Thorne, a lawyer from Chicago, a shark in intellectual property law, who had once impressed me with his passionate defense of small inventors. It was time. My finger hovered over his name. The next morning, I woke with a determination I hadn't felt in a long time. After nearly 3 hours on the phone with Mr. Thorne the previous evening, I had a clear path forward. I put on my best linen suit, one I reserved for special occasions, as if preparing for battle. In a way, I was. Mr. Thorne had listened intently as I outlined the situation and described the documentation I'd collected over the years. His response was measured, but firm. "Alice, this isn't just a problematic dismissal. From what you're describing, and with these records, Legacy Brews could be committing large-scale intellectual property misappropriation, and Ethan personally could be sued for it. The issue of your Legacy Award? That's the rotten cherry on top of this cake." He explained the legal protections for intellectual creations, even within an employment contract, when authorship is clearly provable and there are signs of bad faith from the company. He scheduled a virtual meeting with his specialist team for Monday morning. "Don't sign anything," he had cautioned, "and guard those documents as if they were the recipe for the world's most valuable beer, because, in fact, they are." I spent Saturday digitizing everything, organizing the evidence chronologically, from the first scribbles of the Imperial Dawn to the emails where I detailed the concept to the old management years before Ethan even dreamed of working at the brewery. I created a detailed index. The work kept my mind focused, preventing anger and hurt from overwhelming me. By noon, I had 3 identical flash drives ready. One for Mr. Thorne, one for my personal records, and one that would serve as, let's say, a friendly reminder if needed. My phone rang several times throughout the day. Marlene from HR, Ethan Bradshaw himself, even the company's legal counsel, a fellow who always seemed more interested in wine than beer. I let each call go to voicemail, listening to their increasingly urgent messages. "Alice, we need that paperwork signed today." Ethan's voice was tense. "I can swing by and pick it up if that helps." The lawyer was more direct. "Ms. Miller, it's imperative we receive your signed agreement before close of business. Failure to comply could jeopardize your severance package entirely." Their desperation confirmed what I already suspected. They knew they were on shaky ground and wanted my silence secured before the weekend ended. At 4:30 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Ethan standing on my porch, his expensive suit looking out of place in my modest Riverbend neighborhood. I didn't answer. "Alice, I know you're in there," he called through the door. "This is ridiculous. Just sign the papers and we can all move on." I watched silently as he eventually placed an envelope in my mailbox and returned to his luxury sedan. Only then did I retrieve it. Another copy of the same agreement, with a handwritten note. "Final chance. Signed by 9 a.m. Monday. Alice is ready for the fight. If you're also eager to see this turnaround, go ahead and quickly subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing." That evening, my granddaughter Clara called for our weekly chat. At 16, with a keen curiosity for my brewing world, she noticed something strange in my voice. "Grandma, what's going on? You sound, I don't know, off." I considered downplaying it, but Clara deserved the truth. She dreamed of following in my footsteps. "I was let go from Legacy Brews yesterday, sweetie," I said simply. "What? But what about your award? The Imperial Dawn? They can't do that." Her youthful indignation was almost a balm. "They did," I replied. "But don't worry, Grandma's handling it. Do you need me to come over? I can get a bus from Springfield tomorrow." "No, Angel, stay put. I've got this covered." After we hung up, I sat in my favorite armchair as darkness filled the room, thinking about Monday's meeting with Mr. Thorne's team. For years, I'd tried to protect my creations internally, believing in the integrity of the company Ethan's grandfather had founded. I'd been loyal, discreet, professional, even when I suspected my ideas were being appropriated. But Legacy Brews, under Ethan's command, had made its choice. Now, I would make mine. I would not be signing their agreement. I would not be silenced. And most importantly, I would not let them steal a lifetime's work without consequence. Monday couldn't come soon enough. Monday morning arrived with the bright Midwestern spring sun, a clarity I hadn't felt in days. I dressed carefully, placed my flash drives in a secure briefcase, and logged into the virtual meeting with Mr. Thorne's Chicago office. The weight of what I was about to do was immense, but there was also a sense of rightness, of justice being sought. Mr. Thorne's team consisted of himself, a younger lawyer named Ms. Tara Vance, an expert in intellectual property litigation, and a technical expert, Mr. Oswald, who had analyzed cases in the food and beverage industry. Ms. Vance began. "Ms. Miller, before we proceed, I want to confirm that you understand the process. Once we formalize the cease and desist letter, and if necessary, the lawsuit, this becomes an official dispute. There's no simple turning back." I nodded. "I understand completely." For the next 3 hours, I presented my documentation. The recipe notebooks with dates, the notes on the Imperial Dawn tests since its conception, the emails to old management where I described the beer's potential, the comparisons with Ethan's new ideas. Mr. Oswald analyzed the production records I'd managed to keep, comparing them with the dates Ethan claimed to have created certain lines. "The chronology here is quite clear," he noted. "The core elements of the Imperial Dawn and 3 other successful lines were documented by Ms. Miller 1 to 3 years before the dates listed in internal records as development initiated by new management." "And did you ever raise these?" "Concerns about appropriation internally?" Ms. Vance asked. "Verbally, to my former supervisor who retired, and in emails to Ethan himself, questioning the inspiration for certain decisions. Always professionally," I confirmed, showing copies of the emails. Each time I was told they were coincidences of development, or that I was seeing things. Mr. Thorne pondered. "And you believe your termination was a direct retaliation so he could launch the Imperial Dawn as his own?" "Without a doubt. The timing, 4 days before my award and the official launch, is obvious. But more than that, I had recently refused to validate a production process he wanted to implement for the Imperial Dawn, a process that would cheapen production but compromise the quality I spent years perfecting. He needed me out of the way. The end of the meeting, Ms. Vance outlined the next steps. We'll send the cease and desist letter to Legacy Brews today, with a copy to Ethan Bradshaw personally, detailing the authorship claims and demanding the immediate suspension of any launch or commercial use of the Imperial Dawn and the other disputed recipes, plus a settlement proposal for your legacy award and moral and material damages. They'll have 48 hours to respond. I hadn't even finished my lunch when my phone rang. It was Marlene from HR, her voice trembling. Alice, what's happening? Mr. Bradshaw just received a huge document from a Chicago law firm. He's been locked in his office with the company's legal team for over an hour. And the shouting is reaching all the way out here. People are talking about plagiarism, lawsuits. So, it had begun. Faster than I'd anticipated. Mr. Thorne's letter had certainly hit its mark. I'm not surprised, Marlene, I said calmly. Did you file something, Alice? She hesitated. I simply did what I should have done years ago, I replied. And my severance package? Ethan called me before locking himself in, asking if I'd signed. I'm still evaluating it, Marlene. Still evaluating. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Walter Prescott, the chairman of the board at Legacy Brews, one of the minority partners who had inherited his position from his father and rarely got involved in day-to-day operations, except to flaunt the brewery's success at social events. A man who had barely acknowledged my existence in our few previous encounters. Ms. Miller, he said, his usually booming voice now sounding strained. It seems we have a situation that requires your perspective. Ethan informed me about a notice we received. Would you be willing to come to the office tomorrow morning to discuss matters? I'm afraid that won't be possible, Mr. Prescott, I replied, following Mr. Thorne's advice. Any discussions now should include my attorneys. I'm sure you understand. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. Finally, he cleared his throat. I see. Perhaps we can arrange something more formal, then. As I hung up, I felt no satisfaction, only a deep weariness at the necessity of it all. I never wanted to be a litigant. I just wanted to make my beer, receive the recognition I deserved, and retire with the Imperial Dawn on the market as my legacy. But Ethan and Legacy Brews had forced my hand. My phone continued to ring throughout the evening. Curious former colleagues, worried suppliers, even a local journalist from a craft beer blog who had sniffed out the story. I answered, none of them. The time for private conversations had passed. Now, everything would happen in the open. By Wednesday morning, the storm had fully broken. The leading Midwest business journal published a small note in its business column. Traditional Midwest brewery faces allegations of intellectual property misappropriation by former master brewer. The note, though discreet, was enough to make the company's shares, traded on an access market, stumble. Analysts who weeks before had praised Ethan's innovative vision now questioned the origin of his ideas. I received a registered letter from Legacy Brews. My termination was suspended, and I was placed on paid leave, pending an internal review of the facts. A transparent attempt to mitigate damages, coming far too late. At 10 a.m., Mr. Thorne and Ms. Vance accompanied me to a meeting at Legacy Brews headquarters. The same security guard who had escorted me out on Friday now opened the elevator door, with a respectful nod. The atmosphere in the building was charged, employees whispering in small groups that fell silent abruptly as we passed. We were shown to the main boardroom, where Walter Prescott awaited us with the company's lawyer and 2 other board members. Ethan Bradshaw was conspicuously absent. Thank you for coming, Ms. Miller, Mr. Thorne, Ms. Vance, Walter began, seeming to have aged years in just a few days. We've initiated a full internal investigation into the concerns raised. Ms. Vance spoke before I could respond. Let's be clear, Mr. Prescott. Ms. Miller didn't suddenly raise concerns after her termination. She documented and attempted to discuss the origin and authorship of these creations repeatedly over the past few years, as was her professional duty and right. The company's decision to ignore these warnings, and then to attempt to terminate her on the eve of her work's recognition, and the launch of her main creation, the Imperial Dawn, is the crux of the matter. Walter shifted uncomfortably. Yes, well, that's part of what we're investigating. I want to personally assure Ms. Miller that her termination was a mistake and has been rescinded. We consider her an employee of great value, with all benefits intact, including my Legacy Award and the recognition of authorship for the Imperial Dawn, I asked directly. Of course, he replied quickly. In fact, we're prepared to discuss a new senior consultant role for you after your retirement, which can begin immediately if you wish. We value your expertise and... My client will not be making any decisions today, Mr. Thorne interrupted, and any discussion about future arrangements must be preceded by a formal acknowledgement of the authorship of the disputed recipes and fair compensation for the attempted misappropriation and the moral damage caused. The meeting continued for another hour, with the board members attempting to distance themselves from Ethan's actions and the irregularities Mr. Thorne's letter detailed. They painted themselves as victims of misinformation, expressing shock and disappointment at the apparent misconduct. I remained mostly silent, letting Mr. Thorne and Ms. Vance handle the legal maneuvering while I observed their body language. These were people I'd passed in the hallways for years, yet they'd never really noticed me. Not really. Now they couldn't look away, their expressions a mix of fear and newfound respect. As we prepared to leave, Walter Prescott made one final appeal. Alice, we're hoping you might consider speaking with the press about the corrective actions we're taking. Your support would be invaluable. I looked at him directly for the first time. Mr. Prescott, I dedicated 24 years to the quality and integrity of this company's beers. During that time, I created over a dozen original recipes, including all those that underpinned Legacy Brew's recent growth. I tried, countless times, formally and informally, to protect that legacy from being diluted or usurped. At what point in that history did I have your support? The room fell silent. I will cooperate fully with any internal investigation and with my lawyers to seek justice, I continued. But I will speak only to the facts, as I always have. Whether those facts support or damage Legacy Brews will depend entirely on what you do next, not on what you say in this room. As Mr. Thorne, Ms. Vance, and I walked out, she whispered, "That was perfect, Alice." It wasn't until we reached the parking lot that I allowed myself a deep breath. The adrenaline that had carried me through began to fade, leaving me drained, but clear-headed. This wasn't victory. Not yet. It was merely the beginning of accountability. "What happens now?" I asked Mr. Thorne as we said goodbye. He smiled faintly. Now they scramble to save what they can, while our suit for recognition of authorship and moral and material damages runs its course. But make no mistake, Alice, they're afraid of you. I shook my head. They're not afraid of me. They're afraid of the truth and my evidence. Mr. Thorne nodded. There is a difference indeed, and that difference is why you'll win this. Driving home, I thought of what Arthur would have said. He always encouraged my meticulous nature, my passion for recording, every detail of my creations. Your organization isn't a quirk, Alice dear, he used to say. It's your superpower. Perhaps he'd been right. By Friday, exactly 1 week after my termination, the story had evolved into a small scandal in the Midwest craft beer scene. Specialized blogs and regional business columns began connecting the dots between my abrupt departure and Ethan's sudden genius. The Midwest Craft Brewers Association issued a cautious statement about the importance of ethics and recognition of authorship. I was no longer just Alice Miller, the overlooked master brewer. I was referred to as the artisan behind Legacy Brews and the woman who challenged the local brewing empire. The sudden attention was uncomfortable, but I remained focused on the process, working with Mr. Thorne and Ms. Vance, who now had a mountain of documents from Legacy Brews itself to analyze, requested via a subpoena. Mr. Thorne called to update me. "Alice, it's even clearer than we thought," he said, his voice serious. The internal cost records and marketing projections for the Imperial Dawn under Ethan's name indicate a clear attempt to capitalize on your reputation while cutting costs. On the ingredients you specified, which you had warned against, they were planning to launch an inferior version of your masterpiece. This news should have infuriated me, but instead, it left a bitter taste in my mouth. The company I'd dedicated my life to was willing to tarnish my most important creation, in the name of easy profit. That afternoon, I received a call from Clara, my granddaughter. Her voice was tight with anger. "Grandma, have you seen what that Ethan guy posted on the brewery's social media?" I hadn't. I'd been avoiding the media. "What did he say, sweetie?" I asked calmly. "He made a video talking about disruptive innovations and how the company is looking to the future. Said that some people resist change, and that true authorship belongs to the brand, which invests and takes risks. He's trying to paint you as a stubborn old woman who didn't accept modernity." I wasn't surprised. It was a predictable defense tactic. Attack the victim's credibility rather than address the allegations. "It doesn't matter, Clara," I assured her. "My recipe notebooks, my emails, the dates, all of that speaks for itself. He can't rewrite brewing history with a slick video." But Ethan was trying. That evening, several beer influencers, likely paid, began echoing his narrative, questioning my motives and suggesting I was just trying to extort money from the company after a normal termination. It was a low blow from a desperate man, but it still stung to see my integrity publicly questioned. Ms. Vance called immediately. "Don't respond to any of it, Alice," she advised. "Our initial petition, with all the evidence, will be filed on Monday. Let the documents speak in court." I wasn't planning to respond, but I was going to do something else. The pressure on Alice is mounting. Will she manage to prove her truth? Click subscribe now and hit the bell so you don't miss the electrifying conclusion of this story. On Saturday morning, I drove not to a bank, but to a small, old-fashioned print shop in downtown Riverbend that I'd always admired, sentimental typesetting. I spoke with the owner, Mr. Anselm, an elderly gentleman who knew the town's history like few others. I asked for access to his archives of old newspapers and local business directories. I spent hours there, amidst the smell of ink and old paper, and found what I was looking for. Old Legacy Brews advertisements from 10-15 years ago, mentioning my first award-winning beers, some even with short interviews of me talking about the creative process. I also found catalogs from craft beer fairs where the Imperial Dawn, still as a special project, had been mentioned in the company's promotional material, associated with my name, years before Ethan even dreamed of working there. I photographed everything with my phone. This wasn't for the main lawsuit, which was already robust with my documents. This was for public opinion, for the court of social media where Ethan was trying to defame me. I called Clara. "Sweetie, remember your friend who's a whiz at making those short, impactful videos for the internet?" The bomb exploded on Monday, not because our lawsuit was filed, but because of a 3-minute video Clara and her friend posted. It combined my old photos, the print shop ads, excerpts from my recipe notebooks with the dates clearly visible, and crucially, an audio clip from an old local radio interview where I passionately described the inspiration for the Imperial Dawn. The video ended with the question, "Who really brewed this story?" It went viral in the brewing community and local news groups across the Midwest. The emergency board meeting at Legacy Brews was called for Tuesday morning. I wasn't invited, but Mr. Thorne received a frantic call from the company's lawyer late Monday night, seeking an immediate and confidential settlement. Ms. Vance informed me that the video, combined with the impending lawsuit and the evidence they knew we had created chaos. Ethan had tried to claim the ideas were collaborative developments, but the old material was irrefutable. By noon on Tuesday, Legacy Brews issued a press release. It announced a complete review of its intellectual property and talent recognition, policies, and the immediate departure of Ethan Bradshaw to pursue new challenges. It also confirmed that Walter Prescott was stepping down from the board presidency to dedicate himself to personal projects. The carefully worded note mentioned that the company was in constructive dialogue with master brewer Alice Miller to celebrate her legacy and future contributions. The company's stock dropped another 8%. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Marlene from HR again. "Alice, the new interim CEO would like to meet with you, tomorrow, if possible." The interim CEO was Lorena Guzman, the former COO, a pragmatic woman who had always treated me with professional, albeit distant, respect. I agreed to the meeting, but insisted it take place at Mr. Thorne's office. When Lorena arrived the next day, she looked exhausted, but determined. "Alice," she began, without pleasantries. "The company is in crisis and you're at the center of it. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you were the only one who consistently did what was right and had the courage to keep the proof." She slid a folder across the table, eerily similar to the one Ethan had presented just 11 days earlier. "This officially rescinds your termination process, reinstates you retroactively, and confirms the full payment of your Legacy Award, plus formal and contractual recognition of your authorship of the Imperial Dawn and the other 6 recipes we listed in the notice." I opened the folder. "It also includes an additional compensation package," Lorena continued, "recognizing the damages caused and the stress you've experienced. And a formal apology from the board. The compensation was equivalent to 3 years of my salary, plus a significant bonus. We are also restructuring our innovation department," Lorena went on. "We'd like you to lead a consultancy for the implementation of a new development and intellectual property registration protocol. Your experience is invaluable." I closed the folder without commenting on the offer. "And Ethan Bradshaw? And Mr. Prescott?" Lorena's expression hardened. "The terms of Ethan's departure include a confidentiality agreement and a waiver of any future share in the profits of the Imperial Dawn. As for Mr. Prescott, his dedication to personal projects is permanent. The Bradshaw family is seriously considering selling their majority stake in the company. Justice, it seemed, had a bitter taste for some, but for me, it was starting to resemble a well-balanced double IPA. 6 months later, I was in my kitchen, not a courtroom. Ethan and Walter didn't face criminal charges. Ethan's departure agreement and Walter's retirement were swift enough to prevent a larger judicial scandal for Legacy Brews, which, under Lorena Guzman's leadership, was struggling to rebuild its reputation. The Imperial Dawn, launched with my name prominently featured and the original recipe intact, was a resounding success, winning national and international awards. My Legacy Award was paid with interest, and the additional compensation gave me a financial peace I'd never imagined. I declined the formal consultancy with Legacy Brews, but agreed to train a young master brewer Lorena hired, a talented woman, full of ideas, ensuring the new generation learned the importance of documenting every step. My story, amplified by Clara's video, inspired articles on ethics and intellectual property in the food and beverage industry, and even a panel at a craft brewers conference where I participated. With part of the money, I established a small foundation, the Dawn Spring Fund, to financially support women wanting to start their own small craft production businesses in the Midwest. Jams, cheeses, and of course, beers. Clara, now more enthusiastic than ever about the world of fermentation, was already my first informal scholar, helping run the foundation and dreaming of her own microbrewery. We moved to a house with a larger yard, near a river, where I installed a small pilot brewery system, my private lab. It was there I spent my afternoons, experimenting, creating, without the pressure of targets or the shadow of appropriation. Free. One day, as we watched the golden sunset paint the sky, Clara asked me, "Grandma, do you regret staying at Legacy Brews for so long, after everything?" I considered it carefully. "No, sweetie," I finally answered. "I regret not being firmer sooner, not realizing that blind loyalty can be dangerous, but I don't regret my work, my creations. Integrity isn't just about being honest when it's easy. It's about maintaining your principles, protecting what's rightfully yours, even when, and especially when, they try to take you down." Clara smiled. You taught me that, Grandma. Not with words, but with that secret recipe of yours for courage. And that, I realized, was the greatest award of all. Not the legal victory, not the money, but knowing my struggle had left a legacy of strength and justice for my granddaughter. As for Legacy Brews, it survived, though bruised. Under new majority ownership, with Lorena still at the helm, they implemented strict compliance and authorship recognition protocols. They still send me cases of Imperial Dawn with each new batch, with a thank you card. I receive them, taste them with professional satisfaction, and toast to the truth. Some might see my story as revenge, but I've never viewed it that way. I simply did what I'd always done, documented the facts, protected my creation, and insisted on the truth. The difference is that this time, finally, the brewing world was forced to drink to it. Alice's story shows us that true strength lies in integrity and the courage to fight for what's yours. Even when all seems lost, the truth, well documented, can be the most powerful weapon. What did you think of Alice's comeback? Let us know in the comments below. And tell us, from which city, state, or country are you watching our story today? We love to know how far our narratives reach. If you were moved by this journey of justice and resilience, don't forget to hit that like button to support our work. Share it with friends who also love a good revenge story. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming thrilling tales of female vengeance. Click the bell to be notified. See you next time.